Now, without further delay, let's begin today's event. Sponsored by NTT Data, hosted by Digital Insurance. I'd like to introduce your moderator for today, and that is Lisa Woodley. Lisa, you now have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is experiences, and not just any experiences, but insurance experiences, and talking a little bit about the role that simplification plays in delighting your insurance customers, not just now, but really thinking about the future. And our goal here is to really leave you with some tangible ideas of not just where is the industry going in the future, but what are some things you can start doing today to get there. So we'll go through a little round of introductions first. So I'm Lisa Woodley. I'm Vice President and General Manager at Nexient, which is part of NTT Data. I lead the business in the Northeast, and I've spent the last 20 years focused on leveraging technology to create amazing digital experiences. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been really specifically looking at the insurance experience and what we can bring from other industries to elevate that relationship between the insurer and insured. I'm joined today by an awesome panel, and I'm going to ask each of them to spend just a minute introducing themselves before we kick off the topic. So Henry, do you want to start with your introduction?
Yes, thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone, and good morning if you happen to be on the West Coast. Again, as Lisa said, my name is Henry Wright. I'm the Client Experience Officer for Truist Insurance Holdings, which is part of Truist Financial Corporation, domiciled here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been in the insurance, risk management, business consulting business for over 25 years. I've been on all sides of the coin. I've worked as a consultant. I worked owning a business. I worked for an insurance carrier and also now for a broker. So understanding the insurance industry is definitely one of my fortes. My role here at Truist Insurance Holdings is simply looking through everything that we do to the lens of the client. Whether that's a digital experience, solution development, or any type of product or project touches that we have that involve the client, that's my responsibility. Like Lisa, experience is one of my favorite topics, and I'm delighted to be part of this panel.
All right, thank you, Henry. And Ronak, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Lisa. And again, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, based on where you are. I'm Ronak Doshi, partner with Everest Group. I lead our digital transformation research business in North America and our financial services research, which is across banking, capital markets, and insurance. And again, experience for me is where we are helping clients understand is how does it come at the intersection of the technology and services and how they kind of form the delivery of experiences. So looking at data, cloud, and other technologies, how they come together to kind of deliver that. So looking forward to the discussion out here.
All right. And then last but not least, we have Tom Ford. Tom, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name's Tom Ford, and I am the head of North American Insurance Consulting at NTT Data. My team and I actually have the opportunity to work with clients on everything from innovating to operating in our advisory services and our bringing together everything NTT can bring to the table for our clients. I've spent most of my career in insurance, so it's over 25 years now, having worked in the carrier side, having worked in the consulting side, both in the life and annuity as well as the property and casualty and group insurance areas. So one of the things that I'm really excited about this session for today is that the customer experience is really where business strategy and the enablement largely come together today. And I think we're going to touch on that in a variety of ways as we walk through this.
All right, great. Thanks, Tom. So let's get started. Let's talk about what's driving this whole conversation. One quick reminder as we go through, as mentioned at the beginning, please enter questions throughout at the Q&A, and we'll leave a little bit of time at the end to address them. So let's start with what are we really talking about? So when we say simplified experiences, really from the customer perspective, it's about simplifying the relationship. But let's think about what's driving that. So current state, why do we care? What's going on in the industry and beyond that is pushing us to evolve how we interact with our customers? So I know the panelists have some great insights into this, but I kind of want to first start a little bit different. Let's kick it out to the audience. What do you think is driving this evolution? So we're trying to keep this a little bit interactive, keep everybody awake post-lunch or pre-breakfast, depending on where you are. And I'm going to put up a poll question here and just ask the audience to consider, what do you think is the single biggest factor driving the evolution of how insurers relate to their customers? Now, I know insurance is complicated and relationships are complicated. So rarely is there one factor, but there's one, if you could only pick one that bubbled to the top. Is it new products? Is it new distribution models and partnerships? Is it technology and emerging technologies? Maybe it's changing customer expectations. We know, especially coming out of COVID, there's been a lot of shifts on how people expect to interact digitally. Or is it changing customer demographics as newer generations enter? So if everybody in the audience could pick one of these as what you think the top factor driving the evolution of how we're relating to our customers. Give everybody just a minute for that. All right, let's see what you said, and then we're gonna, hopefully this will kick off some good discussion. So that's fascinating. Very, very interesting. I mean, it's far and away changing customer expectations, which, look, it makes sense. You all chose to attend this webinar for a reason. So my guess is you think changing customer expectations is a big driver from that. But also interesting to see, you know, technologies and partnerships which are sort of intersecting with that. And, you know, demographics are like expectations sort of, expectations beat demographics every time, because you could be different demographic but share expectations. So that's kind of fascinating. I want to take this to our panelists, and Henry, I'm going to start with you. You know, so it's two questions. One, is there anything here that the audience said that's surprising you? And two, when it comes to these, what are you seeing at Truist?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. The poll question and the way it was answered is right in line to what I was thinking. If I was answering the poll myself, it would probably line up the way that it came out here. So changing customer expectations is certainly something that we face here at Truist Insurance Holdings. And my caveat is that, again, we are brokers, we're not insurance carriers. So, and there may be some nuances to that dynamic, but as a broker, that's definitely the number one thing for us. So you think 10 years ago, you know, clients may not have been as demanding as they are currently. They may have been more geared towards price shopping and looking at how they could get the lowest premiums. Right now, all of our clients are looking for the best value that they can get and how they can get services and products that are going to meet their demands and solve their risk problems. So it's really a client-driven demand market where the customers have really high expectations. They want higher delivered services. They want better quality. They want better engagement. And it's a lot different than the market was 10 years ago. And to add to that, I'm going to go a little bit off script already, Lisa. The second point that I would choose would be the new distribution models and partnerships. There's been a lot of consolidation within the industry. Companies are looking to find new carrier partners. They're looking to partner with intermediators. They're looking at creating niche products and services and trying to find other partners that can do that, because the clients are demanding ever-changing and more sophisticated products. They're looking for different coverage types. They're looking for more sophisticated cyber coverage, more coverage around, as a result of the pandemic, how they can be better covered from that aspect, and D&O and other liability coverages. So along with the changing customer expectations, I would rank up there new distribution models and partnerships.
How much of that do you think is a cause and effect? That, you know, you've got the changing customer expectations, and as a result, we need new distribution models, new technologies.
I think there is a direct correlation to that. So, you know, as customers have different needs and they develop different risk, and as they grow their business, comes a different level of expectation along with the sophistication that's needed to run a more complex business. So I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, interesting. So Tom, I want to look at you. So now we've got that great perspective about what Henry's seeing at Truist. Let's go a little bit broader. You know, you have lots of different clients across L&A and P&C. How does this map to what you're seeing, and do you also see that cause and effect?
You know, it's interesting because I didn't expect this to weigh so heavily on the customer expectations. I did expect that to come in top of the poll, but the degree of which it came into took me a little bit by surprise. You know, if you take a look across the industry, you look at personal lines, let's say, and the life space and the group space. One of the things that, with expectations, Henry touched on it with distribution models changing. The ways that you can acquire product now is evolving pretty rapidly. We did a survey earlier this year around banking and financial service relationships in general, and some of the trends that that came out of that around, you know, the recognition of consumers are providing a lot of data, but in return, they expect a more personalized interaction with whomever their partners are. So that's true whether or not you're a financial institution, an insurer. These are, you know, however you're going to acquire products and services, that becomes a big part of the expectation. You know, in the commercial line side of the house, that also becomes, especially with the distribution model itself, with the brokered coverages, what the agents are expecting, and they are customers as well, from the carriers, is becoming more and more dynamic and deeper in nature. So the, you know, depending on the market segment, we see a lot of difference in where, how would I put this, where in the value chain and where in the customer, what somebody defines as a customer, where the expectations are changing, but it's everywhere. But it is across the entire.
Interesting. So now let's get, you know, even broader. So Ronak, as an analyst at Everest, you really do have a broad industry perspective. What's your take on these answers, and is there anything that you see that either is aligning or differentiating from this?
Yeah, and Tom, you said, yeah, you're surprised with the results, right? I would say I'm not surprised with the results, right? I will be on the other bucket of the side of it. And let's take that broader view, right? What's the underlying drivers behind this change in customer expectations? The underlying drivers behind the change in these expectations is the assessment of the risk from a consumer perspective. That's evolved and changed thanks to the set of events that have happened over the last 3 years. Other industries have started to, you know, impact how insurance behaves. So we are also starting to see this lines blurring between industries. So what we are now looking at is this wholesome end-to-end experience, and the risk protection is embedded in that entire journey. So as a consumer, I want to get the protection services at the moment of the need, at the point of the purchase, vis-a-vis trying to start a different sales cycle or a buying cycle to buy the protection. So if I'm buying a new, you know, electronic device that is really expensive, can that protection for that be bundled, right? The same applies to my house, to my car, all across all personal lines, and then it also applies to a lot of the wealth products, right? Emerging risk that we're talking about. I think one of the best examples that was taken was cyber risk, I think. As we are thinking of these, you know, new and emerging risks, how do we do that better? And how do we, so the ethos of insurance industry is now changing from, I'm not insuring loss, but I'm ensuring protection. And as you move towards that, your expectations are absolutely changing. And that's where, how do you become more, and again, we hear these terms, right? It's more connected insurance, it's more embedded insurance. That's how the experience is changing. That's impacting the entire value chain in terms of the way products are designed, to the way they're underwritten, to the way they're distributed, and the way they're consumed. I would say all of these are going to be, and I think one of the questions, Lisa, you had is, right, are these correlated? Absolutely. I would agree with Henry's answer. They are. And that's how we see this to be a combination of factors and not just one single factor driving this behavior.
Interesting. And, you know, what aspect does, and I too am going to go a little off script here, but where does data play into that? Because we've just got volumes and volumes and volumes of data. You know, how is that impacting what we can deliver and what the customers are expecting?
So if you look at traditionally the way we are assessing risk is on a lot of historical data. Now what we are starting to say is we now have access to real-time data. We have the ability to even predict some of the future events with much higher accuracy thanks to the machine learning models. Can we start embedding those into our entire value chain, right, insurance value chain, from the building of the product to underwriting of it to the distribution of it? So we are seeing data to play a big role. And definitely there are challenges with the data that comes along with, which is the quality of the data, the format of the data, the access to the data. All of these are areas which we are seeing the industry work towards and get it ready. So we are seeing several investments across data lake, data architecture being done currently, just so that they have the right data in place to make these decisions. And the good part is a lot of the technology that has evolved, thanks to all the cloud data platforms. Not just the data, but also the machine learning technologies that you can use on the data is getting democratized. So this democratization of data and the technologies that help you to make sense out of that data is what is also helping this industry make a lot of value towards that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's almost when I hear all of you talking and then I look at this survey, it's that we have customer expectations are changing, and there's a lot driving that. Around, not on this poll, right, but things outside of this poll that are driving that, including other industries. And then behind that you have, because those customer expectations are changing, we need to rethink distribution models and partnerships. We need to rethink our products. And then I'm almost hearing, you, Ronak, saying, and then it's the emerging technologies as the how. So we've got this, what we are trying to do, and now we have a how. There's a whole new slew of things out there that are going to enable us to do things that we maybe never even dreamed we could be doing.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And I have to say, as someone who sits at that intersection of technology and humans, the insurance industry has always fascinated me, because at the end of the day, and I've heard this for the last 10 years working with insurance clients, it's a relationship business. And I remember early in the days of bringing digital into insurance, it's like, oh, you can't automate that. You can't digitize that. This is a relationship business. And it's really now coming down to all of this is coming together to impact this relationship, and the way we relate to insurance is changing. And so, Ronak, you segued really well in that last bit into what our next topic is, which is the future. So we see that we have these various drivers that are driving us to change. We've got enablers of the change, but where is it taking us, and where does the future look like? And so I always love it when we can, get somebody from Everest on here, because you are always thinking about the future, and you've got that broad industry view. What do you think, what will change with how customers relate, and how will insurance evolve? And you sort of started to hit on it there about the difference of the products. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lisa, just going back to what I said earlier, right? We are moving from the core principles of the industry was ensuring the loss, right? Which is, right, there is a risk event, it might happen, we'll insure it. Now what we are saying is let's ensure protection. Let's work with you to minimize that loss. Let's avoid that loss and work together to be safe, right? So it's about protection and making the customer feel safe in the environment. And again, if you look at over the last 3 years, that has been a big challenge, right? Be it health, be it life, be it property and other things, even wealth. Everybody has seen several shocks in their life, in their personal lives, and their people that they know, and they've realized that it is important to get protected from these unseen events, because nobody could have predicted some of these events happening. And hence they see a significant value in insurance, right? So we've seen the value of insurance being much more evident for individual customers. And from there, as we move to the future of insurance, is everybody's asking us, we want to be buying insurance, we want it to be simplified, we want to be available on the channels at the moment of need when we need it. So think of this as, it has to be secured, it has to be ubiquitous, it has to be personalized, it has to be easy to buy, and it has to be relevant to my specific need, right? So if you look at all these coming together, right? Secured, ubiquitous, personalized, easy, and relevant. It's like SUPER. Like it has to be a super experience that you need to start designing. And that's where I believe the industry is headed. And to be able to do that, you're going to start with digitizing your operation, right? So it's not just about customer experience. It's about how do you do front to back transformation to be able to deliver those experiences And then as we start thinking about it, and you mentioned it, Lisa, which is automation, right, which is the starting bit of it, then using more data into the operations and making it intelligent. And over a period of time, you're then starting to innovate in terms of new products, new risk, new distribution models, and driving innovation in it. And I listen to the reinsurers, the way they talk about the industry and the way they're thinking 10 years, 15, 20 years down the line. They talk about underwriting transformation as a strong theme to drive this change in experience, because then they're changing the ethos from insuring loss to insuring protection. So all of this then comes to who's good at underwriting, right? If you talk about experience as a whole, which is where we are seeing the industry headed, and that's where all the current investments are being built. It's like a step change, gradual change toward it. But if I add all of this up, and as we look at the crystal ball here, that's where a lot of the industry is headed.
Do you see, just a quick follow-up there, how do you see insurtechs, like some of the insurtech startups, playing? Are they pushing? Are they competing? Are they building the green field that's going to be the future of the legacy insurers? How do you see that interacting here?
Insurtech space has been, I would say, amazing in terms of the innovation that they're bringing. They're challenging the traditional ways of thinking. And where they have been more successful is enabling the existing carriers and the distributors and brokers to do better. So I think that's an area where they have been, helping in terms of creating new channels, helping digitize certain processes, bring more analytics and automation, bring new data sets. They have been more powerful, right? Bringing point solutions to do pricing better or rating agencies better, right? So I think those are the areas where insurtech have been really successful. Insurtechs, when they're trying to replace traditional incumbents, I think what they have struggled with is the fundamentals, which is, if you look at their combined ratios, if you look at the loss ratios, they've not yet made money. So getting them to the profitability stages where they've struggled, which the incumbents in the market, they're doing really well currently. If you look at the recent quarter results for all the insurers, they actually are doing well when it comes to both growth as well as profitability. So that's something which the insurtechs will have to buckle up and work harder towards. But again, on the experience front, absolutely, they're creating some amazing innovations, and a lot of that is helping the incumbents in the market to actually do better.
Interesting. So Tom, I'm gonna jump over to you now. So you work with some of the largest insurers in the business to help them tackle some really complex challenges. What do you see? So where are some of your clients now, and where are they heading?
Well, I think one of the things Ronak touched on, around automation. I mean, that is something that is still a key driver in the industry. One of the things, though, that I think is interesting is that that's gone from being profit driven as only primarily, right, to take out cost and to maybe decrease cycle times, and is becoming more and more about the view from an experience standpoint. And it's being looked at closely in that way, from the simplest, being able to pre-fill and reduce the amount of information that's required to be able to provide a quote, to much more sophisticated activities around risk management and being proactive in managing risks for clients. But I think one of the areas that becomes a real enabler around this that I see companies focusing on is becoming more product centric, thinking about product management as opposed to just the insurance product itself, but also taking the whole experience that is part of acquiring the product. That was part of what's driving the distribution channels and the new partnerships. That's part of what's driving the automation. It's part of what really is bringing a collaborative environment really across, in my mind, the product people, the deep insurance experts, the people who really understand selling and how to sell within the marketplace, with the customer experience, with the customer service, with the data, and with the architectural disciplines that are needed to be able to do that. You notice I didn't use the word agile when I said any of that, because agile, was originally, and had in a lot of places still is looked at as a methodology of delivery, but that's really, and getting that blocking and tackling down, I think a lot of people have gone through that. This concept of product owner and product management is really driving a lot. And there's a lot of organizational change and culture change that's required in being successful with that. And we see a lot of clients, working through that and breaking down those walls right now.
Interesting. So Henry, your business spans banking, commercial insurance, personal lines. So there might be a lot of different answers to this question of what are you seeing between and across those lines of business in terms of the future and where you're trying to get the business to be?
Yes, Lisa, there are a lot of different answers to that and a lot of different dynamics as we think about our clients across all channels. We have banking clients that have a variety of financial needs, whether it's deposits, loans, wealth, capital formation, and then we have our insurance clients, and then we have a combination of both. So our job in the insurance sector is to fill in the gap from a risk and insurance perspective for all the clients that we have across the enterprise and all their many different financial needs. So we try to do that as an insurance broker. As I see the future of these products develop, I'm going to reiterate some of the things that our panelists have already said. I think we have to evolve. I think in the personal market, we have to definitely have more digital experiences. We have to have more mobile offerings. As the demographics of the country changes and we have a lot of young entrants into the market, we have to be able to accommodate that and give them products and services that meet their needs where they are. So we can no longer have traditional channels to how we distribute these products and services. Everyone is technology savvy, everyone is mobile savvy. So we have to have more of those products, especially in the personal market. And Tom said something early on, more personal interaction. I think our clients are looking for more personalized interaction to give them solutions that are going to apply to their specific stage of their life and their lifestyle. On the commercial side, I think there's an element of customization that we need to do there also, according to our clients' risk appetite and how they grow their business. So there's not a one size fits all, a one model fits all, and traditional way of we've underwritten or looked at clients may have to change because our clients' risk appetite are changing over time. Again, they want some innovation from the insurance industry that keeps up with the innovation that they deal with in other aspects of their business. Our poll shows that their changing customer expectation was the leading vote getter when we put these categories in front of them. So the future for our consumer sector on the commercial side is we have to be more innovative and provocative of how we create products and services that meet their demands. For example, some things that I think we should think about, Lisa, is traditionally how we apply insurance in a traditional cycle, a renewal period of 12 months, a policy. Some of those items may need to change. Why do we have 12-month cycles? Why can't we insure clients in an indefinite period? As long as we understand their risk, we're communicating back and forth with data, and we are getting increased premiums based on the risk and how our clients share their data with us. So there's nothing that says in this future model that we have to have a traditional policy that covers a 12-month period. And those are the type of things that we have to think about to be creative with our clients as we go into the digital age.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's almost as if you're talking about a product that lives and breathes with the policyholder as they're living and breathing. And it's not quite pay as you go, but it is a little bit, it sounds like, depending on where you are in your life cycle, or even on the commercial side where your business is, and I imagine that takes a lot of data and a lot of trust to be able to build that out so that you've got an understanding and the customer is also feeling like, yes, you understand me. And so when my premium goes up, I understand why.
Yes,
Or when it goes
exactly
down,
right.
right? To be fair, sometimes it goes down.
Exactly right. For sure, there has to be elements of trust built into this platform to make sure that we're protecting the data, that we're using it appropriately, and it's to the betterment of the client.
Absolutely. Tom, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's one other aspect of this, and it was something I think either Henry or Rona touched on earlier, which is also education.
Yeah.
And there is, this is not necessarily a simple product set, or it's a more complex product set in many cases than it needs to be. So really helping educate people and developing the trust that you're actually there as a protector, not as a not as a transactional organization. Is, I think, a big part of the evolution that's going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see it as a necessary evil, right? And we don't want to be like, oh yeah, I can't drive my car off this lot unless I have insurance, and you need to be flipping that mindset.
Yeah.
All right. So we've spent the last few minutes talking about the future as a green field, but we know we aren't starting from scratch, right? So we sort of talked about the drivers at the beginning. Then spent a couple of minutes talking about sort of where we want to go, and we're hearing about the idea of new products that are not, you sign up every year, you renew every year, but maybe a little bit more embedded in your life. Ronak, you talked a little bit about what insurtechs are bringing and all of this technology. So, there's a lot of interesting things out in the future, but we're also living in reality. And I think one of the things I promised at the beginning of this webinar is the most useful things aren't look at this cool vision of the future. It's look at this cool vision of the future. Here's some things that we need to talk about today so that we might actually get there. So I want to go into a final segment that talks a little bit about sort of the barriers and some ways that we can start to overcome those barriers to reach this future state. But again, I promised the audience I'm going to keep it a little interactive, so I want to kick something back to you. I want you to think about the future of the insurance that we just discussed. And we're going to give you a magic wand. And this magic wand is going to allow you to fix one thing that you think is standing in the way of the future that you want. So I'm going to pop this up. We're going to give you some choices. Now we know these aren't completely comprehensive choices, but we narrowed it down. So pick one. If there's one thing that you could fix that's currently happening, or that you could change, would it be, your agility and adaptability? Sorry. So would you become more nimble and more agile than you currently are today? Would you fix real-time customer understanding? So we know from the conversations we're having, and Ronak mentioned, it's getting real-time now. So if you could wave the magic wand and in your organization get to data understanding, data literacy, that understanding of that volume. And is it data fluency? So there's the real-time customer understanding, and then there's that ability to consume all of the data. Is it the core system modernization, or is it an ability to attract new talent? Because we know that there's a war for talent out there, and that's impacting insurers. So spend a minute thinking about that. Just one thing, and again, we force you down to one thing because we want to sort of get at what is that top, the top barrier. So let's see what we've got here. All right, so this one's a lot more spread out than the first one was. So we've got, I think, to be more agile, real-time customer understanding, core system modernization. I think it's interesting because when we were coming up with these options, we were debating real-time customer understanding and data fluency sort of go hand in hand, right? Data fluency is how you get to real-time understanding. So, we're going to sort of go back kind of like we did the first one. So if we think about the biggest barrier, Henry, is there, and we'll go in a little bit more into how do we strike the balance, but just your hot take on this poll of, here, is there anything surprising you, or is there anything missing here that you think we should have added as a barrier?
Yeah, Lisa, again, I think my thoughts were in line with what came out as number one, real-time customer understanding. That would have been my top pick as well. I'm a little surprised about the core system modernization following in a close second, and the agility and adaptability. That's a little surprising to me. I would have thought the war on talent would have been our ability to attract new talent would have had some responses there, because we're all in the war on talent and we're all trying to acquire talent. But again, back to the real-time customer understanding, customers have told us that they don't understand how their risks are identified and quantified, and how their premiums are calculated, and how we get to that magic underwriting number. And so we have to be able to offer some transparency around that to be able to serve our customers properly. So that doesn't surprise me. But again, I thought the war on talent, or being able to attract new talent, would be a very close second.
That is interesting, because I almost see the agility and adaptability is not going to come if you don't have the right talent. So I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, and one other thing, Lisa, that surprises me is not having any responses on data fluency, because I think it was Ronak that we talked about earlier. Is we have to be able to better utilize client data in order to understand their risk. And so far in the industry, most often we're using backwards looking data, meaning we're using historical data and not looking at any predictive metrics or models. Mm-hmm. So I'm surprised that there wasn't more interest in that category as well.
It's interesting. Tom, what's your take?
So we actually starting off with the data piece. Maybe next time we do this poll, we'll say like a data confidence as opposed to data fluency. Could be two very different sets of answers.
And I will say, in all fairness to the audience, we went back and forth with how we should describe that. So,
yeah, the core systems modernization. It's not shocking. It's a little bit disappointing, but I think we all see this throughout our clients that in our organizations that data core modernization is a constraint. And it's that legacy capability that is keeping so many companies from being able to do some of the other things that they want to be able to do with expanding into new distribution models, about being agile, and about really understanding their customers. A lot of progress, a lot of time and money has gone into that over the last 20 years in this industry. And, I'm
Are you surprised we're not there yet? Was that, or you are or aren't surprised? Because sometimes, okay, I think anybody in the industry is not surprised that we're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Lisa. And, one of the things that's going on is that I think part of that is I've often been of the opinion that insurance is not saddled with the fact that they are laggards with technology, but frankly, they've been early adopters in many cases. Mm-hmm. Some people, I get in some interesting bar conversations on that one, but but truly, we put things in that because it brings real meaningful improvements today, but may not be architected to protect for the future. So we're finding more and more core systems, or things that are supplementing core systems today, that really will increase the speed of innovation, but we're not ready to be able to plug them in yet, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. I truly believe that the capability is there, but I think we're stuck a little bit with our legacy. The understanding real-time customers didn't surprise me with that coming up top. It's interesting because this is an industry that is based on data. We don't create anything physical at the end of the day. We take data and we use it to analyze risks and to determine what ratings should be, and to process claims, and to bring all this automation to bear. But one of the things that I think we have been laggards in is taking that data and really, what in other industries, in retail industries, will consider householding data, and really using that to create intimate knowledge of the customer, and really understanding, kind of where they are in their life cycle. I've got 3 young adult children, and it's amazing to me that, the only thing that keeps my children working with some of the insurers that I've worked with over the years is a relationship, but it's all on my end to initiate that. It's not no one's helping me figure that out and helping me lead my kids there. So I think in that area, and that's across products that you can go there. And then on the commercial line side, a whole other thing around understanding the customers and their risk in their business. So that's a lot, but that's really where I think a lot of the thinking is around that.
And then when I going back to the core system modernization, what I hear you, the boardroom conversation you're talking about, it's almost early adopters, late evolvers, right? like insurance adopted technology very, very early, but then they were very slow to evolve. So it's like, and then what we're saddled with is the early adoption of 25 years ago is the way I think about it when I look at it. So Ronak, what's your take on this and on that idea of early adoption, late evolution?
So I would say, Lisa, one of the reasons we got this response from the audience is because you said, if you had a magic wand, if you wanted to change one thing, what you would do, right? And again, understanding customers is difficult, right? It's the hardest thing to do. So if I were in an insurer's position, that's the thing I want to understand. And again, if you look at the number of products that we are selling has increased exponentially. The number of channels we are selling through it is increasing. And the number of personas of customers, right? Again, Tom, you mentioned young adults who are behaving very differently, right? So the number of personas we are selling to has increased. So if you look at this, another equation that we have, right? P products, C channels, and N personas. This equation P into C into N is increasing, right? This is not manageable through our traditional systems. It is not adaptable and agile if we don't have the right data in place. So we need to industrialize the delivery of these personalized experiences and understand these customers better. And that P into C into N is continues to increasing. So that's where the challenge is, and that's where I would agree that real-time customer understanding is where I would want to get my magic wand there, and everything else will definitely solve after.
Interesting. So, I promised after this we get a little bit into striking a balance and moving to the future. So I'm actually going to just jump off of this, so we're not fixated on that, because I want to move on to sort of the next thing. So we know we don't have magic wands as much as we want, and we know insurance is a balance. So we've got the future we want, the reality where we are today, and we're balancing, we see, you just mentioned it, Ronak, like the desire to leverage customer data with making decisions with the industry's tendency to focus on risk data, which you had mentioned earlier, and how we reconcile that. And Henry, I want to go to you, because when we were preparing for this session, and that concept came up of that balance between customer data versus risk data and how decisions are being made, and you had a couple of thoughts on that, and I'd like you to share that with everyone and elaborating a little bit on that balance that you see.
Sure. So first, let's all agree that we're in an experience economy. So just like we do in our everyday lives, we buy products and services based on our experience, mostly. Not so much on the product or the solution or the service itself. We're looking for experiences. And in a lot of cases, we pay for that, right? We pay a premium for that because we want that experience. We have to move the insurance industry in that direction so that our clients are getting a better experience. And how do we do that? By understanding the data. But again, it's not looking at lost data. It's not looking at historical data. It's looking at householding data, as Tom said, or hyper-personalization type data, so that we understand the client better. Some things that we need to really be adept at is looking at unstructured data, things that we can learn about our client that's not in claim losses or historical data. We can look at their buying patterns. We can look at their predicted market changes, how they're growing, what their personnel is doing inside their business, and the type of things that they're looking for, their lifestyle changes, especially when we talk about employee benefits and wellness and those type of insurance coverages. So we really have to do a better job of understanding data that we traditionally have not captured as an insurance industry, not just loss runs and premiums and ratings and exposure data. We have to look at that unstructured data that is out there all over the marketplace that everyone else is capitalizing on. We're just not doing it as well in the insurance industry.
It's interesting because it almost seems like you're talking about the pivot between, the reality is when you're really focused on that loss data, it's almost like the insurer protecting themselves, pivoting to the insurer protecting the insured. right? So, and we still, we still need to protect our businesses and make sure that we're not taking on undue risk. But some of that has to do with pivoting that customer understanding of how can I protect you, and then thereby building our business.
Exactly. And I'm not suggesting that we discard that data and don't use it. Of course, we're
it can't be the sole source.
We're still going to evaluate the risk, but alongside that, we need to capture the rest of this data that's out there.
Precisely. So Ronak, speaking of that, there's two sides to trust, right? And so I want to talk about trust, but what we just brought, there's the trust of, does the insured trust what the insurer is doing with their data? But then the insurer also has to trust the data they're getting is not going to put them at risk. How do you see that balance happening?
No, and it's a fantastic question, right? And I think glad that we're talking about it, because if you look at from an experiences perspective, customers are looking for an insurer who's not just protecting them, but also is now aligned in terms of in their best interest. And that in their best interest is not just in the interest of them as an individual, but them as a member of a local community, the region, the broader planet as a whole, right? So that has become very important. Is, do I trust that entity that is going to protect my risk? Do I also trust that company, and do I believe in their brand? So one of the things we are seeing from a insurance perspective is they are creating a strong brand alignment in terms of we are responsible, purpose-driven organizations who are thinking about the broader environment, broader ecological balances and other things, and we're kind of creating that trust environment. So there's trust at that level. And then if you bring it down multiple levels, then there is trust at a policy level, which is, and again, I think Tom mentioned this, right? There needs to be transparency. Are you basically making it easy for me to consume the document that you're giving as a policy document? Are you explaining the terms to me? Is the fees and premium very transparent? Is the processes very transparent? How easy it is? And the better simplified policy document it is, the easier I understand stuff and the easier it is for me to do stuff, right? That's where trust is such an important element of the overall experience, right? So we spoke about, if you look at the start of the discussion, we were talking about agility and, the able to understand customer experiences better. So we wanted to have the speed, but now we've talked about, I think Henry mentioned this great point around having the right data to take those decisions. So you need to have higher accuracy, and then you need to have this trust, and all three come together to deliver these experiences. So definitely trust, you cannot overlook it, right? It becomes such an anchor theme in all of these, and it is slightly effervescent in its sense, right? It's something which is more qualitative, and it's not something which you can quantify as a risk element. That's where it becomes even more important when we talk about experiences. And again, Lisa, you would see this in your experience when we start projects on doing experience design. You will talk about human-centered design thinking, right? How do you kind of bring that aspect, how you design these processes? And I think those are the things which, as we start designing those human-centered experience with an element of trust, we do a much better job at simplifying the experience. And again, that's one of the key aspects of the topic itself today. So.
Right. So threaded throughout this, Tom, is data, right? It's we just had the conversation of where do we get there's the risk data, there's householding data, there's trust in the data, there's me trusting as the insurer, trusting the data is accurate, there's the customer trusting. There's got to be a lot of strategies then behind the data. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what are the strategies that you see clients employing around data? Because there's so many things to be thinking about, and they've got to figure out where to focus, right?
Yeah, I like the question, Lisa, because, and you actually partially answered it in the way you teed it up, because going in and talking about data with clients is fascinating, depending on who you're talking to, what their area of focus and what their area of priority is, varies wildly, right? So the strategies of using data for customer experience and, for augmenting sales or making a sales process, faster. And I don't care if you're talking personal lines or commercial lines, right? Everyone's looking to be able to speed up the ability to get to a quote and get to a client close, right? So you get one set of aspects and point of view there. When you're back on the claims side, you start getting more on, well, how do I speed up this process, but also how do I aggregate this data for fraud detection, be able to have more straight-through processing. I mean, AI, ML come in large in that kind of space. So it's a different set of conversations. The product design groups and really seeing more conversations now around customer segmentation. Right? And that's something that is becoming more common to have those conversations, and not bringing it up and getting just looked at, but bringing it up and actually saying, yeah, there's more to do there, but we're starting to work on that. It's so depending on the stakeholder you're talking about, it becomes very interesting and very relevant. There's a ton of data, and there's only so much that any organization will undertake at one time. Where I see the most important part of the strategy, it's really starting with that. I'm going to go back to a product management and a product owner concept, because that's the individual who at the end of the day will kind of own the P&L, kind of own the product, kind of own the experience, and really needs to do the prioritization on what I need to do with the data to be able to improve my business, improve my product offering. And then the unfortunate challenge on the IT side is that that's going to vary wildly depending on product set. And being able to have that core capability and the disciplines to be able to put a framework in place, right, that will allow you to meet those different business needs and be able to do it to scale. To be able to have the responsibility to do it in an economically sound fashion for the business, because at the end of the day, there's still the cost ratios that are critically important in this business. So I think the key. So there is the to me now, being able to take things from that overall product standpoint, with the input across the organization to inform and help, educate and have those agile teams that deliver on this. That's where it starts. And that's the most important part of the strategy in my mind today.
Yeah, and I think that actually touches a little bit, if we go back to that previous survey, the war for talent, a lot of that is data, right? Data talent. Like, how do we need these data people that can help us parse this out. But then also that speaks also to the agility or the nimbleness, if you don't want to use the A word, if you feel like that may be too focused on a methodology. But that's really interesting.
In addition to the data and the internal data that organizations have, there is an explosion of, people talk about insurtechs. A lot of insurtechs are really focused on external data. And just
it's the unstructured data that we were just talking about, right? That both Henry and were just talking about.
Absolutely, right. So how you incorporate those, and even how do you stay aware of those so that you can factor it into your innovation cycles.
Yep.
And your roadmaps, right?
Interesting. All right, so with about 5 minutes to go, we did have a couple of questions come into the Q&A. So if the panelists are okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to that. And so the first one coming in, so we see more discussion on the total experience. So not just customer experience, but a total experience. And we still see gaps in terms of tying the processes and communications for the end user. So I think it's gaps with how we're communicating with that end user across the life cycle. So what do you see in the market? So actually, Ronak, I'm going to start with you because you were nodding your head as I was asking that. So I feel like you might have an answer teed up for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, this is one of my favorite topics in the insurance market. And it actually goes back to, what you and Tom were discussing, which is first to adopt, but slow to evolve. And I think it is one of those symptoms of those where we are here, right? When we talk about total experience, we're talking about experience for all stakeholders. So it's not just the customers, but it's the agent, it's the employees, and everybody around it. And what happens is we are investing a lot into modernizing our technology to get to these digital channels, digital experiences. But a lot of the investments is on the front office. Now, what happens is you have an engine which is running at 100 times the speed than the rest of your vehicle. And what's now happening is you're creating a bottleneck because your front end, your front office is working at a much faster rate, but the rest of the engine at the mid back office processes are running slower because those have not yet been modernized. And that's where what we start seeing is gaps. We start seeing silos. We start seeing integration issues. And also it's about technologies of two different eras trying to communicate with each other, which is where things start breaking. And there have been patch fixes being done, right? We've done some automation scripts and other things. But as your systems evolve, as your data evolves, as your product evolves, your patch fixes don't work. And then you need a lot of manual interventions, which is where this issue is very rightly highlighted, in the question out here. And we do see work being done out there, absolutely. We're starting to see these things being, addressed from multiple perspectives. I know, Tom, you might have a view on this, but what we are seeing is there is a customer at the center of the world and then trying to create experiences around it and processes around it, and restructuring organizations. The entire carrier organizations are being restructured to kind of deliver on those experiences, or creating more data-driven organizations, which is then trying to do this. So there is a step being taken, but a lot of work is left. Tom, Henry, your views on this one?
Yeah, that's you touch on a lot of the key points, especially when we start talking about all of the channels that are going on, the different communications that can happen across those channels. Not just being able to bring it all together, not just the modeling of what that experience looks like for all the stakeholders. Let's see if I can put the point on this I want well. There is a lot of focus has sometimes been on pushing people to certain types of channels, as opposed to making sure that you make the experience easy for the customer, regardless of the channel. And some things you only can do or should only do through a personal channel. Part of this comes into what you want your brand to be. Are you going to be a white glove, high touch brand, or are you going to be, more about, digital native and not as, focusing more on price and automation, but understanding who you are, how you want to engage, and then looking, as you said, across the stakeholders and thinking about how you, create that end-to-end experience. And you really have to start with the key areas, the key moments that individuals are going to be engaging with you. And make sure you get those right.
So we are up against the clock here. I do have one quick one. Ronak, what did super stand for again? Can you just say that really quickly in our last 30 seconds? That was a question.
Absolutely. It's super, ubiquitous, personalized, easy, and relevant, right? All of these together is super.
All right, great. All right, so I want to thank the three panelists. It was awesome to hear from the industry, Henry to hear from Truist's perspective, sort of on the ground, and then Tom to get that broader view across different clients. Really appreciate everyone's time. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to jump here to the last one. If there were any questions that came in that we didn't answer, we can certainly reach out to you. To have one of our panelists answer offline. You can also reach out to Simon DeZurich at NTT Data if you have other follow-on questions that you want to talk about. But with that, we are right up against the clock. I want to really thank Henry, Ronak, Tom. Thank you very much for a really interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great facilitation.
Thank you.